Mustafar, Palpatine's vision for the perfect Sith heir was shattered, but he didn't wait to lick his wounds. He moved quickly, activating every darkside asset that he had cultivated in secret for years. One of his first measures was to expand the Inquisitors. These were the fallen former Jedi who had broken under torture or been seduced by promises of power. Trained in lightsaber combat and specialized to hunting Order 66 survivors, the Inquisitors were effective, but in the Emperor's eyes, they were little more than expendable hounds. They were never given access to the true teachings of the Sith and to true dark power. Then there were the dark side adepts of the world of Abyss, fanatical cultists and scholars of forbidden lore. They gathered in hidden citadels to study Sith alchemy and ancient rituals. They wore black robes and carried red blades, but none of them ever stood before Sidious as a true apprentice or even close to an equal. They were a priesthood of darkness, useful, but ultimately beneath the Emperor's ambition. Among the other shadows, however, one figure stood out as something more formidable, something special. Jerec had once been a respected Jedi Master, renowned for his archaeological knowledge and hunger for forbidden truth, but after he fell to the dark side, he became one of Palpatine's most loyal and powerful agents. Blind, but still able to see through the Force itself, Jerec commanded a cadre of dark Jedi and plotted to uncover the Valley of Jedi, a place rumored to hold unimaginable power. He was not content to remain a subordinate to Sidious. Unlike the other Inquisitors, Jerec actively dreamed of overthrowing both Sidious and Vader. In his private musings and secret councils, he spoke openly of seizing the Valley's energy to elevate himself beyond any Sith who had come before. But it's important to draw a distinction here. While Jerec's power was undeniable, and while his ambition was vast, Palpatine himself never seriously considered elevating Jerec as a Sith apprentice. In the Emperor's mind, Jerec was a tool to secure ancient knowledge and destroy Jedi enclaves, but not a candidate to inherit the rule of two. Jerec's aspirations were tolerated only because they were aligned in part to the Emperor's own interest. To Sidious, these figures, the Inquisitors, the Adepts, and even Jerec were all ultimately lesser instruments, powerful enough to terrorize the galaxy, but never worthy enough to sit on any throne. Yet, they set the stage for the next echelon of contenders. Those whose service to Palpatine took a different form, blending shadow warfare with absolute loyalty. And among them was an agent who in Vader's eyes embodied everything that he despised. When Anakin fell into the lava on Mustafar, it was more than the destruction of a body, it was the end of a grand vision. For decades, Sidious had orchestrated a campaign of deception, betrayal, and war, all for one singular purpose: to claim the galaxy and to forge the perfect Sith dynasty. Anakin was not just another apprentice, he was the chosen one, an anomaly in the Force whose midichlorian count surpassed any being in recorded history. From the moment he met the boy from Tatooine, Palpatine knew that if he could mold him, no Jedi or Sith could ever rival their power. But it is important to remember that Palpatine's ambitions were never limited to just a single candidate. Even before Anakin's fall, he had studied the potential of countless others. In Legends, Palpatine quietly considered whether Maul, if he had survived, could be elevated further. During the Clone Wars, he kept Dooku close, never fully trusting him, still holding on to the possibility that Dooku was incredibly useful, admirable, and powerful. Sidious even maintained secret files on Force-sensitive children, potential assets that he could one day mold into servants, or even a successor. All of this is to say, when Anakin was crippled, it did not end Sidious's plans. It merely forced him to accelerate his contingencies. According to Legends, the Emperor was disgusted in the early years with Vader. He considered Vader crippled, a tragic disappointment, far less than what he had invested decades to create. Yet, even in this disgust, he never gave up on the idea of shaping the perfect Sith heir. He simply began the process yet again, searching for new instruments to realize the destiny that Vader had failed to fulfill. Beyond the Dark Enforcers and fallen Jedi, there were other figures who served the Emperor in more subtle ways, operatives who combined Force sensitivity with absolute loyalty. Chief among them was Mara Jade, known across the Empire as the Emperor's Hand. Mara Jade was different from the Inquisitors. She wasn't a hunter of Jedi by profession, nor a commander of a dark side cult. She was an infiltrator, an assassin, a whisper in the darkness who could reach any corner of the galaxy. Mara Jade possessed a rare telepathic link to the Emperor himself, Through this connection, she received his instructions without any intermediaries, and in many ways, she was more personally trusted than almost any other Imperial servant. What made Mara Jade's relationship with Palpatine so remarkable and so dangerous in the eyes of others was the way that Sidious deliberately encouraged her to believe that she could be something greater. On more than one occasion, Sidious praised her skill in Vader's presence, deliberately provoking tension between them. He would commend her efficiency, her obedience, her subtlety, all the qualities he felt that Vader had long since abandoned in favor of brute, overwhelming force. In private audiences, Palpatine sometimes implied that if she continued to grow in power, her destiny might eclipse the role that she currently occupied. It was no accident. This was classic Sidious, pitting his servants against each other to sharpen their ambition and to fuel their dependence on his approval. To Mara, these moments of recognition were intoxicating. They fueled her sense of purpose and her belief that she could one day be a greater role in the Empire. But to Vader, they were nothing but mere theater. In Vader's eyes, Mara was an irritant, a clever agent who believed herself indispensable, yet lacked the power to ever threaten him directly. Vader understood the game that the Emperor was playing with Mara. He knew Palpatine would never truly replace a Sith Lord with an assassin, no matter how skilled she was, and that knowledge only deepened his contempt for her. Mara Jade's special status was in the end a tool, a way to keep her loyal, a way to remind Vader that even after Mustafar, the Emperor's power over his servants was absolute. No matter how much Palpatine praised her, she remained an instrument, never a successor. But among all of Palpatine's machinations, there was one apprentice who was not merely a pawn or a distraction, one who was trained in secret to become the heir that Vader had failed to become. Among all the dark side adepts and secret enforcers who served the Empire, there was perhaps no figure more enigmatic or more complicated than Lumiya. Born as Shira Bree, she came into Palpatine's service not as a Sith acolyte, but as an exceptional intelligence operative. Recruited into Imperial intelligence, and then personally groomed at the Imperial Academy at Karida, Shira proved herself to be resourceful, fearless, and utterly loyal. By the time she came to the Emperor's notice, she was already among the most promising covert agents in the Empire's vast intelligence network. It was during this period where Palpatine began to see Shira as more than another disposable asset. Unlike the Inquisitors or the Emperor's hands, she was something of a hybrid, a highly skilled operative who combined military discipline with force sensitivity. Some sources even suggest Palpatine saw in her the possibility of a unique tool, someone who could operate far beyond the reach of typical darkside enforcers, blending espionage and the Force in ways that Vader seldom could. Her fate changed dramatically though in a single moment. During a mission against the Rebel Alliance where she had gone deep undercover, the Force itself alerted Luke Skywalker to her danger, and Luke shot her starfighter down. This would alter her life forever. Her injuries were catastrophic, but rather than let her die, she was retrieved and reconstructed with extensive cybernetic implants, enhancements that left her less than fully human in both body, and some would argue, in her very spirit. In the aftermath of her transformation, she took upon a new name, Lumiya. It was Vader, not Sidious, who took the most active role in her rebirth though. Vader personally oversaw her training in the dark side, teaching her to use that of anger and pain as tools of power. He instructed her in the construction of her own unique weapon, the Light Whip, a lightsaber so unorthodox that even seasoned Jedi struggled to counter it. Yet, Palpatine was never blind to what Vader was doing. He watched Lumiya's development with cold curiosity, evaluating whether this newly forged disciple may someday serve a purpose beyond covert assignments, something more. And while Sidious almost certainly never intended to elevate Lumiya to full Sith apprenticeship during Vader's life, he also never forbade her training. In typical fashion, he allowed her existence to act both as a contingency and a provocation, a subtle reminder to Vader that no one was indispensable. For her part, Lumiya was ambitious. She did not simply want to be another assassin or inquisitor. She studied alchemy, learned obscure rituals, and embraced her hybrid existence as proof of her commitment. Over time, she came to believe that she was destined for something greater, a destiny that Palpatine never quite confirmed, but never explicitly denied. Vader's view of Lumiya was more complex. Unlike Mara Jade, whom he saw as an irritant, Lumiya had survived unimaginable trauma and returned more powerful and dangerous than ever. He respected her resolve and her capacity for cruelty, but even he understood that her training was incomplete. However formidable as she would become, she was not a true rival, more of an experiment, a testament to Vader's ability to mold a servant in his own image. After Palpatine's death, Lumiya finally seized the identity that she had long since coveted. In the years following Endor, she declared herself a Dark Lady of the Sith, embracing the legacy that neither Vader nor Sidious had ever formally granted her. Her claim was more than a hollow boast though. She would eventually mentor Jacen Solo, guiding him to becoming Darth Vader, one of the most destructive Sith Lords in galactic history. It is in this later chapter of her life that cements Lumiya as one of the most consequential darkside figures to emerge from the Empire. While she was never truly positioned to replace Vader in Palpatine's eyes, she came closer to realizing the Sith's enduring legacy than any other Imperial agent or operative. And beyond all of them, Lumiya did become a Sith, though not a part of the lineage of the Rule of Two. Lumiya's story is a study of contrast. She was created by Vader, observed by Palpatine, and ultimately left to forge her own destiny. In her ambition, she revealed just how far the Emperor's reach extended, and how few were ever permitted to cross the threshold to servant to true heir. Among all the contenders who emerged in the shadow of Vader, none came closer to embodying the raw potential, though, of that of another, Galen Marek, the apprentice the galaxy would come to know as Starkiller. From the beginning, Starkiller was a secret born of Vader's disappointment. Years into his service as Palpatine's enforcer, Vader's resentment for his master festered. He saw himself as incomplete, a crippled reminder of what he could have been. Palpatine's constant provocations and the Emperor's praise of lesser servants only deepened his resolve to create a successor, one who would surpass them all. When Vader discovered the young Galen on the world of Kashyyyk, hiding among the last remnants of the Jedi, he sensed something extraordinary, a child whose Force signature burned with the ferocity few beings ever possessed. He did not hesitate. Vader killed Galen's father and took the boy in secret, raising him not as a son, but as a weapon. From the first day of his training, Starkiller was taught only one principle. The Force was power, and it must be wielded without restraint. Vader never taught him subtlety or balance. There was no meditation on the living Force, no study of harmony nor peace. What existed was only domination, only the raw, unrelenting violence of the dark side. Starkiller was a gamble as audacious as it was heretical. Starkiller would become the instrument by which Vader would overthrow the Emperor and claim the destiny that he believed Sidious had stolen. Under Vader's brutal tutelage, Starkiller's abilities grew at an astonishing rate. He mastered lightsaber combat, learned how to hurl starships from the sky, and obliterated Jedi survivors who had eluded the Empire for decades. His power was so monumental that for a time, he truly became a legitimate contender for the title of Sith Lord. Yet, in that single-minded pursuit of strength, Vader overlooked something essential. Starkiller was not born of darkness. His mother and father had been Jedi, and the memories of that lineage, though buried, were never truly erased. When Starkiller began to uncover the truth of his origins, something stirred within him. He began to understand that while Vader had shown him limitless potential of the dark side, he had never shown him the meaning of the Force itself. Starkiller had never heard its stillness, never felt the peace that his parents had once embraced. The light called to him in a way that Vader had not foreseen. In that connection, he discovered purpose beyond vengeance. Ironically, it was this rediscovered heritage that made him truly dangerous. A Force wielder of staggering power with the heart no longer fully bound to the dark side, Starkiller became a threat that neither Vader nor Palpatine could control. Palpatine's discovery of Starkiller was inevitable, but rather than immediately destroy the boy, the Emperor allowed the conspiracy to continue. Amused to see whether Vader's secret weapon could be molded into something useful, or simply bait to expose hidden enemies. In the end, Starkiller would choose his own path, and when given the chance to strike down the Emperor and seize the power that he had trained to crave, he refused. He embraced the legacy of his parents, and turned that power to protect rather than destroy. In his final moments, Starkiller sacrificed himself to save the fledgling rebellion, forging a spark that would one day consume the entirety of the Empire. Yet, even in death, Starkiller proved something about the nature of Darth Vader. For all his injuries, for all his bitterness, Vader survived the assault of his own apprentice, a testament to his enduring strength as a true Sith. Starkiller's power was immense, but Vader's mastery was still greater. In all the long years of service to Sidious, only one other figure ever made Vader question whether he could hold that place. Only one other candidate inspired Palpatine to cast aside every contingency and to make a true offer of succession. And that final choice did not come from the Emperor's experiments or Vader's ambition. It came from the bloodline that started it all. In the end, all of Palpatine's schemes, every experiment, every secret apprentice, every contingency, led to a single figure: Luke Skywalker. From the first moment the Emperor learned of Luke's existence, he knew the son of Anakin Skywalker represented something none of his other servants ever could. Here was a being unbroken by tragedy, unscarred by betrayal, a vessel of the same extraordinary potential that had once burned in Anakin, but untouched by decades of servitude or hatred. Unlike Lumiya, who had been shaped by Vader's instruction, or Starkiller, who had been forged through relentless brutality, Luke was a blank canvas. To Palpatine, this made him the ultimate prize. If he could be turned, he would not merely replace Vader, he would surpass him. This was not a hidden conspiracy or a contingency plan. It was the final open gamble of a ruler who believed that he had already conquered every other challenge in the galaxy. When the moment came, Palpatine orchestrated it with meticulous care. He allowed the Rebel Alliance to come to Endor, drawing Luke into the trap that he had waited years to spring. He understood that raw power alone could not corrupt the Jedi of Luke's strength. Only love and fear. Only the threat of losing his father and his friends. That would break the Jedi. In that darkened throne room aboard the second Death Star, the Emperor laid bare his final design. He provoked Luke with the image of his friends dying, with the certainty that the rebellion would fail. He taunted him with the knowledge that only hatred could save the people that he loved. And for a moment, it seemed that that plan would succeed. As Luke struck down at Vader in a frenzy of rage, Palpatine saw what he had always hoped to see: the birth of a new Sith Lord, powerful enough to eclipse any who had come before him. Unlike Lumiya, whose ambitions had always been constrained by doubt, or Starkiller, whose loyalties had been divided, Luke burned with an unrestrained fury. And in that moment, Palpatine did something he had never done with any other apprentice. He offered the throne without reservation. Strike me down, and your journey to the dark side will be complete. Take your father's place at my side. This was no deception, no half-hearted test. For the first time since Anakin's fall, Palpatine was prepared to discard Vader entirely. He saw in Luke the perfected heir that he had always dreamed of, a being who could establish a Sith dynasty without rival. But where every other candidate had failed, where every other contender had seized upon the promise of power, Luke did something no one else could. He stepped back from the abyss. He looked down at his father and his severed hand, at the cybernetics that had become his own, and he finally saw the truth. Never. I'll never turn to the dark side. You failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi, like my father before me. In that instant, the Emperor's last and greatest plan was undone. The perfect apprentice he had longed for had rejected him utterly in this moment. All the power in the galaxy could not compel Luke to become the monster that Palpatine needed him to be. And for Vader, broken, scarred, and shackled by decades of self-loathing, it was the final revelation. He saw in Luke's refusal everything that he had lost, everything that he had been. And for the first time in decades, Vader chose something other than fear, other than hate. As Palpatine's rage consumed the throne room, the Emperor finally understood what none of his countless apprentices, assassins, or experiments had ever shown him. In the end, all his ambitions would be defeated not by strength, but by compassion. Of all the contenders who stood in Vader's shadow, only Luke Skywalker could have ever truly replaced him, and only Luke Skywalker could have saved him. In all of the years of conquest, treachery, and manipulation, Palpatine never stopped searching for the perfect apprentice. From the moment Anakin Skywalker knelt before him, Sidious believed he had found the heir who would one day surpass every Sith who had come before. And yet, for all the power that Anakin possessed, it slipped right through Palpatine's grasp in a single stroke of destiny and flame. When the black armor was sealed around Vader's burned body, the Emperor did not see a triumph. He saw only failure. A ruined vessel. For years, Sidious never hid that disappointment. He humiliated Vader in private. He praised lesser servants in his presence. He tested his loyalty with the provocations of impossible orders. He fostered rivalries with figures like Jade and allowed rumors of replacement to fester. But in time, something changed. While the Inquisitors were consumed by their own pettiness, while Lumiya's ambitions were never fully crystallized, while Starkiller died defiant, and Luke refused the darkness, Vader endured. He became more than a weapon. He became an instrument of pure, unrelenting domination. In Vader, Palpatine saw not the promise of a chosen one fulfilled, but something perhaps more useful. a creature whose every breath was now agony, whose every moment was hatred. In Dark Empire, Sidious reflected on this legacy with a strange, almost satisfied contempt. He calls Vader a minor masterpiece, not because he was the strongest Sith who ever walked the galaxy, but because he was the most perfectly broken. Vader had been transformed into a creature of the dark side so absolute that he no longer needed purpose beyond submission. He hunted Jedi without question. He carried out every atrocity without remorse. His pain became fuel, and his fury became legend. In the end, no apprentice, no matter how skilled, no matter how promising, ever fully replaced him. It was Darth Vader who enforced the New Order. Vader who broke the last embers of the Jedi. Vader whose silhouette became the symbol of the Empire's unstoppable, unquestionable will. Its dominance. Palpatine never forgot what had been lost on Mustafar. He never stopped dreaming of an heir who would rise above Vader's limitations. But in the quiet recesses of his thoughts, even Sidious came to respect what he had created. A man who could have been a savior, turned into the perfect monster. A figure who embodied every lesson of the Sith. That fear is stronger than hope. That pain is stronger than love. And that nothing could be more powerful than the desire to dominate. He was not the dynasty the Emperor had imagined. He was not the living god the Sith had long since prophesied. But in his own savage, terrible way, Darth Vader became the truest disciple that the dark side had ever produced. And in that final judgment, perhaps the most telling truth was this: even broken, Vader was irreplaceable. And so, my friends, those were the apprentices that Palpatine rejected in favor of Darth Vader. I do hope that you've enjoyed today's longer holocron, and if you stayed till the end, if all of the apprentices or would-be apprentices were to duel, who do you believe would come out on top? But as always, thank you so much for joining us here in the archives again today, and may the Force be with you.